Hello, basketball fans. DC Hugh here from Fantasy Basketball Analyzer. And I hope you're doing well. Hope you enjoyed the All-Star break and didn't forget about your fantasy teams. Maybe even started wheeling and dealing, or at least looking ahead to the playoffs. Um, if you haven't done that, or if you missed it, I put out a video yesterday to get ready for the fantasy basketball playoffs a little bit early, talk about some strategy and trades. I'll throw a link right here so you can go back and look at that. All right, so week 18 is kind of the second half of a week. Like Yahoo, even by default, combines week 17 and 18 into one league, 1 week, which is good because it makes it like an even week. Not all leagues do that, but even with Yahoo, if you do have that set up, you still get to make roster changes. You can change your lineup, which is kind of like like it's underrated fun in my opinion, because now you actually get to look and say, okay, I'm winning. Say you're in an 8 category league. In one of my leagues right now, I'm winning 7-1, and I'm only losing free throw percentage. So I'm able to look and see, okay, I've actually got this lead right here. Maybe I make a couple choices in this weekly locks league to make sure I don't give up anything in free throws and try and take the 8 wins in this league. You don't get to do that too often unless you've got playoffs with a 2-week format. So that's kind of fun. But games aren't going to resume till Thursday. And I don't need to do the full screen of how many teams are playing all these games. I can just go right here with the lower third and just show it right now. So Chicago plays 3 games. You get a whole extra game out of Chicago, and that's definitely valuable if you have anyone from Chicago worth playing. And obviously you could pick up someone, Chris Dunn's still out there. Could be White's out there a lot of places. If you wanted to, you could pick someone and plug them in and get the 3 games. The Clippers, New York, and Orlando are basically useless. They only play 1 game. And when it's 1 game versus 2 games, sure, you could have 1 blow-up game from Kawhi. It's completely possible. Also, they're going to play Sacramento, so it's definitely possible that 1 blow-up game from Kawhi is going to be better than, I don't know, Duncan Robinson. With your superstars, you probably still have to stick with it in general. But with 1 game, it's only 1 bite of the apple. There's so much more opportunity to put up, someone would have to get 6 3-pointers to be better than a 3-point shooting specialist on 2 games, right? 6 3-pointers in a single game versus 2 games of 3 threes. So it's something to consider. New York in particular is going to end up playing Indiana, which is going to make them pretty undesirable. So even with their 1 game, it's also a tougher defense. All right, so we've got the schedule. We don't need to do the full screen here. We kind of jump right into our routine. So let's go ahead and look at the strength of schedule, see if anything's really changed for our pace of play and stuff like that. Bring it up here. It's the teams you suspect at the top: Washington, Atlanta, New Orleans, Cleveland. I think it's interesting. It hasn't really changed, but after, like I named those 4, we've got Portland, Minnesota, and then Houston and Memphis are now down there in the 6-7 slot. And that's a little different. Houston and Memphis are still very attackable. So I look at the overall average of where we get that, and their overall average is still, 106, 107, which is normally in our top 5. But some teams have just, Cleveland and stuff have just been failing upwards in our average. So I highlighted a few extra teams here in yellow because they're still kind of in that range of ideal teams that we'd like to attack. But normally I just do top 5, bottom 5. But that's a little arbitrary, and a good matchup's a good matchup. If there's 10 good teams to attack, then there's 10 good teams to attack. The bottom of the league, they're the usual suspects as well, right? We got Denver, we got Boston, we got Philly, Indiana. So don't want to spend too much time on this part. Let's go ahead and look over the strength of the schedule. So we're bringing up the calendar. You can see here, I highlighted both the yellow and green. We've got a shorter week, so I want to give a little more input on, with it being pretty even, most teams playing 2 games. For this to really make an impact, I had to dive a little further to be giving you a little extra, because otherwise you just say, everyone plays 2 games, I'm playing my best guys. So aside from Chicago having 3 games, I went ahead and highlighted. I also highlighted some of the team names you'll notice here. So Miami has 2 games. They get to play Atlanta and Cleveland. So those are both matchups that you love. So if you've got anyone in Miami, you probably want to roll them out this week. They should go out and blow up. New Orleans, Utah, Golden State, I highlighted them all in yellow just because one of their teams ended up being a yellow team. But Golden State's got a pretty good matchup here. We get Houston and New Orleans. You like that. New Orleans gets to play Portland and Golden State. You like that. And Utah gets the Spurs and Houston. Now, the Spurs and Houston aren't the top in our matchup. In fact, I even felt weird highlighting the Spurs. The metrics are telling me, based on how I make suggestions on strength of schedule, that the Spurs should be in here. That they're kind of the bottom team of that top wave at my average of 106.4, which means they're someone you want to attack. And when I watch them, I can see that they're different this year and last year, but it still feels weird. They're still the Spurs. I still want to give them respect by just, default 22 years, whatever, of respecting the Spurs. But the numbers say you want to attack them, which makes Utah a favorable schedule. Also, they get that back-to-back. So I don't expect there being too much waiver action this week on the short, compacted week. There's no quality days where you could pick someone up to stream because all the games are clustered in these 4 days. But Utah is also worth attacking. If we're looking at, like I said, New York only has 1 game, so they're probably not valuable, but it's also against Indiana, which really means don't just find another option. Minnesota's got a pretty bad week here. They've got 2 games, but they play both Boston and Denver, which are good defenses with slow pace of play. Boston's a little bit quicker defense, a little bit quicker pace, but great defense. Denver's slower and a solid defense. So something to look at there. While we're talking about strength of schedule, I want to call out a couple of games that maybe impacted a little bit more. So I put some green boxes around some of the teams you'll see. Golden State plays Houston. So when we've got 2 teams that we like to attack playing each other, that should be a really high scoring game. That means that's the type of game, especially if you play DFS, so there's a lot of opportunities for some numbers there. So that's something to look at. And if everyone's tied for 2 games and you can't decide, who gets that last utility spot on your lineup, maybe that's a deciding factor of, not only is this a team I like to attack, both sides are a fast pace of play team. And so maybe I want to get in there. Friday should be a fun DFS day because of the same idea I'm saying. So Cleveland plays Washington. So those are 2 of the fastest playing worst defensive teams, and they get to play each other. So that should be a big high flying game, which means there's a lot of opportunity for fantasy production. And at the same time, New Orleans plays Portland. So there's another most desirable team to attack playing each other. So if you're playing DFS that night, you've got 2 games to really focus in on and attack that lineup. And then you can kind of stay away from, we got Boston out there, Indy out there, Denver, Toronto, all on the same day. Now that doesn't necessarily affect your weekly league, but if you're in daily change league, those are games you really want to get a piece of. And there's a lot of teams playing that day. So that could be a difference maker if you're trying to go, I don't know who to play. Maybe this helps you make that decision a little bit. All right. Switching over to our back-to-backs here. Now, with all the games condensed, there's a few back-to-backs. But I don't know why I just spaced out there. A few back-to-backs, you can look at it like normal. But with it being a condensed week, I don't think there's going to be a ton of streaming in your daily change leagues where you pick someone up to play them later. If you want to, it's important to note that Memphis has the back-to-back on Thursday, Friday. So they play Sacramento and the Lakers, and then they're off for the next 2 days. So if you were to pick up someone, Brandon Clark or someone like that, say Milton probably is out there, you could roll him out. Sorry, I said Milton. I meant Milton. You could roll him out there for the first half of the week and then still try and pick up an extra game from somewhere. Or even if you wanted to get greedy, Chicago's got the Saturday, Sunday back-to-back, so you could play them. So normally I won't do this, but I did throw together a graphic for all of the back-to-backs. Let me pull this up so I can read it to you guys. There we go. So Thursday, Friday, Memphis is on the back-to-back. Friday, Saturday, which with only 4 games is kind of the heart of the week, so it doesn't really leave you a lot of streaming moves. But Cleveland, Dallas, Phoenix, and Utah. And then Saturday, Sunday, Chicago. So if you did want to try and make a move, you could get Memphis and Chicago and turn that 1 roster spot into a 4-game week. There's not a lot of options to do that. So if you did do that, you would be giving yourself an advantage over other people. But the players have to be available there on the waiver if you want to do that. So if we want to talk about waivers, it's going to be a short list here this week because we're coming off All-Star break. Nothing's really changed since we've seen it that. So I'm going to focus in on these teams with really plus matchups. So Miami, New Orleans, Utah are all the teams from the strength of schedule that tag that would have someone you really want to play. So out there in at least half of leagues, if not more. Duncan Robinson's available for Miami. Josh Hart for New Orleans. I know I keep talking about him every time I talk about the waivers, but small forward, but you can slot him in at shooting guard, and you get a shooting guard who's getting 7 rebounds. It's pretty awesome, especially if you're trying to target something like this where you're already playing your opponent, potentially, if that's how your league is set up, and you're getting to make the change, and you're, say, behind in rebounds or something like that. You can target certain moves. So Josh Hart's out there. And then for Utah, Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson was crazy hot. He probably didn't even want All-Star break to happen for how well he was playing into it. So hopefully he can come out still rolling. And Utah's got a pretty good week too with that back-to-back there. So it's pretty quick this week. Not a ton going on. Is that if you didn't watch the video I just put out yesterday, where I was trying to do some playoff prep, there's a worksheet there for you to start looking at the opponents to get ready for your push to the playoffs or start making some moves to really lock down your team and give yourself an advantage later on. A little tip that I said in there in case you missed it. So right now, week 18 is about to start. If we look ahead 1 week, if we're looking at the remaining schedule right now, next week, week 19, Chicago has 2 games and the Spurs have 2 games. If you're trying to claw your way into the playoffs, right now by looking 2 weeks out, I would look at who your week 19 opponent is and check, do you have any Chicago players or Spurs players? Go seek out a trade and ship out your Spurs and Bulls to that opponent. Now, that's easier said than done. You have to have those players. They have to have something they want. You have to pull off the deal. But if you can do it now while they're not looking at the matchup and the head-to-head, they're not going to realize that you're potentially giving them a two-game week and stealing a 4-game week, which obviously that picks up 2 games for you, but it's amplified because it moves, it counts double because you're stealing it directly from them and they can't use it against you, and they're going to have to figure out another move. So if you're looking ahead, and this is where it really tightens down here, where you're trying to claw into those playoffs, something you want to look at. So that's a tip to try and pull off right now. Set your lineups for this week and start looking ahead and get ready for that. The only other thing about getting ready for next week that I didn't really talk about was we're talking about the back-to-backs. Minnesota plays Denver Sunday. They have a back-to-back going into Monday, and Washington plays Chicago. They have a back-to-back as well. So I flagged those 2 guys. So with a short week where you're maybe not doing a lot of streaming moves, it might make extra sense this week to pick up a Timberwolf or Wizard that you're not playing this week, but you're going to get to, or maybe even get to work them in this Sunday, and then you get to play them on Monday in your daily change league, and you use some of this week's waiver moves to roll into next week. All right, this is pretty quick. If this was helpful, go ahead and hit the like, hit the subscribe. Thanks for watching. Any eagle-eyed spotters that were just watching maybe saw the battery logo that my camera was dying while I was trying to wrap that out, and I didn't quite get there. So I just wanted to say thanks for watching. If you didn't check out the playoff schedule preview, check that out. I put a link before. I'll put a link at the end of the show here. It's got a worksheet for you to start filling out your opponent and get ready for that. I also got some good comments on that, asking for some players. I'm going to go through and build this list, so I'm not just doing it off the cuff, but some players that might be resting or tanking, not available yet for that playoff push. So some players maybe to avoid or that we want to look at. So I've got to put in some time and get you some extra content. But that was great. I loved the feedback. Love seeing you guys watch. So if there is anything else, especially now that you're worrying about whether it's a specific trade or in general, I'm wondering about this or this might be helpful, go ahead, hit me with it. This is fun. We're in it together. Let's get ready to go win it. Thanks. Have a good week, everyone.